So, I've bought a fridge. An actual 12-volt compressor fridge to replace the thermoelectric cooler that was problematic from the get-go. This one is an Aspinora 37 liters. Chosen semi-randomly after seeing one video using it, and then finding a good deal on it. I'll do a separate video soon on just the cooler. The old one was more or less a cube. It was about 18 inches high by 19 inches deep and 17 inches wide, including the wooden box I'd built around it. The old thermoelectric one, which I tried to improve by adding insulation and a thermostat, just couldn't overcome its limitations. Aside from not cooling enough and drawing too much power, I'd miscalculated when building the kitchen and I couldn't open the lid all the way without pulling the cooler forward. The new fridge is only 15.5 inches high, 14.5 inches deep, but it's 24 inches long, so I'll need to edit out about 6 inches of kitchen to make it fit. First to go will be the garbage compartment. It was too small, and I was already planning to change it. It's just screwed onto the stove in the water compartment, so it's pretty straightforward to remove it. Though it was a pretty tight fit to get the drill in there, even with the flexible attachment, and with the varnish sticking to itself. Now, if the water compartment is pushed all the way over, then I have just enough room for the pantry box. I'll need to somehow find a spot for this drawer because I need somewhere to keep bottles and oil and stuff standing upright. Plus, I still need to have room for storing the stove. Even with the cooler as far over as possible, I still have the problem that I can't open the lid. So that's no good. To have good clearance for the lid, looks like I'll need about 3 inches on this side. Which of course is good for the fridge vents too. But that still leaves us with the problem of the stove, which is now wider than the gap I have. But luckily, it fits perfectly if I turn it sideways. I have just enough room for the plywood that I'll use for its box. That's very lucky. I can't believe how well that will fit and how tight the clearances are going to be. The pantry box I have definitely does not fit in that space, so it's back to the drawing board. And this time, the drawing board is going to be SketchUp. I'm not crazy about SketchUp so far. I find it a bit unintuitive, but I thought I would give it a try. I'm going to start by seeing if I can reuse this slide that the stove fits on. So first, I'm going to take the hinge off and I'm going to mark the front edge so I don't mess up where the holes should be. Then I just rotate it sideways and it happens to be just the right width. Varnish seems to stick everything together really well. And now I have to replicate the rabbets that I cut for the hinge on the new side. The first cut is the width of the hinge, but very shallow, just to accommodate the thickness of the hinge leaf. So just a 32nd of an inch less than the 3/8 of the plywood or so. Next cut is for the knuckle of the hinge, and this one is about 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch. And that's more than the kerf of my saw blade, so I'll have to make 2 passes. There we go. Now we're ready for a hinge. I want to reuse this front panel too, so I've done the math and I need to take 7/8 of an inch off each side. Of course, now I have to shorten the hinge too, and since I want to reuse the original screw holes, I'll have to take a bit off each side. I sure hate cutting these things. I'm just going to tidy up the corners a bit and sand any rough edges. For the new edge, I need to mark the hole placement and pre-drill for my tiny fiddly little screws. They are number 6 screws, but they're only 3/8 of an inch long. They're barely there, but that's enough to hold the hinge on. In my SketchUp plan, I made a cutting list and I've pre-cut all the pieces for the new box. I also used a table saw to slice off the back end of the condiment drawer, and I used the part I cut off to make the little drop front drawer. Now to glue it up. And this is not how to do it. Whatever you do, don't put your glue on before finding your clamps and setting it up. This right here is a lesson in how not to do stuff. Now this is how you should do it. You dry clamp your pieces and then just take out the piece you need to glue. Then it's just a matter of getting that piece back into place. And then even that sometimes needs readjusting because this first one isn't quite on its line. I've got to make a center line on the back so I can get my nails to line up with the piece of wood behind it. Even this part could have been done before starting to glue. I'm nailing it together with these little 23 gauge pin nails, and their job is just to hold the wood in place until I can get the whole thing clamped. It's the glue that actually holds it together. I was making so many mistakes while trying to film at the same time as assembling it that I stopped trying to film it. But I did take a few photos. As you can see, it's a pretty complex box, and I needed to assemble it in a particular order, otherwise I wouldn't be able to get my glue gun in where I needed it to go. Here you can see the hole that's ready for the pin that will allow the drop front box to pivot. And like I said, I needed to get it all assembled quickly and then clamp everything so that the glue dries under pressure to have the strongest bond possible, since they're all just butt joints. So I'll leave that overnight till I'm 100% sure it's completely dry. And now voila, the new pantry box for the kitchen. Looks just like the SketchUp plan, doesn't it? And notice the second handhold on the back for lifting it. I tend to call this the condiments drawer, but it also holds dish soap, so who knows what it should be called. This is the slide for the stove. And here's that finished drop front drawer. And the cubby for keeping the butane. I keep most of the extra butane under the floor of the van, but it's nice to have one nearby when you run out in the middle of cooking. Now it's time to put it all back in the van. Here's the new fridge. As you can see, it takes up nearly half the kitchen, but we should have lots more room for fresh fruits and vegetables, and hopefully cold drinks. Water storage, sink, and cutlery go in here. And now the new pantry box. Now they all have to go as far left as possible so as to leave as much room on the right-hand side for the fridge vents. And of course, to have room to open the lid. Right back at the beginning, I removed the garbage bag holder. So now I have to find a new solution for waste management. Most parks we go to have recycling, and some even separate out organic wastes. So we found we needed space to be able to sort all of that. So for the garbage and the recycling, what I picked out was this plastic bag holder that is made to hang on a cupboard door. Of course, we don't have cupboard doors, so I'm going to cut some slots in the side of the pull-out kitchen shelf so I can hang the garbage bag off either edge of the shelf while I'm cooking. Okay, so apparently that's what happens if you don't do a test first. Whenever I think I have visualized exactly how it will work, but of course I see now that there's no surface for the bag to rest against, so of course it's going to swing under. That's what I get for being cocky and sure of myself and not cutting a test hole first. So I've remeasured and I cut a test hole in some scrap wood, and at least this one should work. So when the kitchen is closed up, the garbage bag will hang here on the front of the pantry box, making this handhold do double duty. Our city doesn't allow single-use plastics, so what bags you do get are extra thick so they hold up to repeated use, which is great for this kind of use. On the other hand, the gray band here has little tabs that lock it together, and they have a bit of trouble with the thicker plastic. With the old system, we found that recyclables took up the most space, so that's what we're going to put in the main part of this bag. So we're just going to put a little bag inside the main bag for actual garbage. Since all the stinky and potentially leaky stuff goes in the compost, I chose a more solid container for that, and I like to use something like a fruit bag as a liner to save on cleanup. And this one most definitely needs a lid. When the kitchen is closed up, the compost bucket fits just nicely here, just under the spigot of the water jug. So after all my grief earlier cutting out those slots, it turns out I misjudged how much room there would be at the side of the shelf, but I forgot how it fits in with the exterior of the van. So after all the stress of trying to hang it from the kitchen shelf, the solution was right there, needing no modification at all. But what I am finding is that now I have to shift things around a bit every time I want to access the drawers and cubbies. Oh well. So here's the new pantry box in its full glory. I find now that when I use the stove, I just pull the whole thing out and leave it on its slide, which seems to work just fine. Drawer for oil and vinegar and stuff. I made the drawer much shorter to leave room for the butane behind it, and found out that I needed to add a tall back to it so it wouldn't tip when it pulled out all the way. My little drop front drawer was an interesting experiment. I keep the matches here, plus this thing, which is a blow tube for the fire. It works amazingly. It lets you blow a strong stream of air right into the center of the fire. And this is the main pantry storage. I found that this shelf over the drawer acts as a good place to put more fragile things, like these ripe tomatoes that would get squished if they were down in the main compartment. And now I have butane close at hand for when it runs out in the middle of cooking. Everything else is just basic food storage, cans of tomatoes, oatmeal, etc. The old box was a bit rattly, so this time I added a bit of weather stripping for a softer closed lid and no rattle when we're driving. And that's the new kitchen layout. I'll have a few more kitchen updates to show you, so I'll be back soon with those, plus a full video about the new Aspinora fridge. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching.